Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, let's pull up this screen. Oh, yeah, Vols versus Akron. Going to have reaction and grades and going to go through all the stats and talk about what happened in the game and all those good things. All right, now this was a very interesting game in that 102,000 people were at that game. This was Akron. Akron, 102,000 people. I watched it on ESPN Plus. You might have too, or you might have been there. Everybody else was there. I just can't get over that. Sold out for Akron. Yeah, and Coach Heupel, I think, and I think Coach Heupel was impressed as well with 102,000 people. I think this is Coach Heupel from now on.
There's no place like home. There's no place like home.
Yeah, definitely no place like home for Coach Heupel. He was very impressed. I watched him after the game talking about it, and he was all fired up about it. And he said, and I believe this is kind of a quote, he said, "You want to be where it matters, where people really care about the game and care about the team." And he said, and let me assure you, in this place, they care a lot. I mean, he was shocked at the 102,000 people for what was really a warm-up game. So that was pretty impressive. That is what this team has done. It's so exciting to watch this team. It's can't-miss football. And look, there's a lot of other people in the SEC that are watching this team because they're fun to watch, and it's an exciting brand of football. If you watched any of the other ball games yesterday, most of them were snooze fest. I mean, unless they were close. I mean, like Florida and FSU, for example, that was actually not that boring. But a lot of the games are boring, and not the Vols because it is action-packed. And I was glad to see Joe Milton, man, a couple of beautiful throws. And, of course, you know, Hendon and all that. So we're going to get into that. Let's start out with our guy, Jalen Hyatt. Man, did he have a game. I think the player of the game was probably Jalen Hyatt with his 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wow, was he looking fast. I've told you several times that Coach Heupel and Golish are really looking for speed. That's what they want to see this team excel at, and I'm seeing a really fast team out there. I'm seeing a team that looks very different than a few years ago. I mean, we're fast everywhere. We're fast on the defensive line, wide receivers, quarterbacks, running backs. We're just fast everywhere.
I feel the need for speed. Ow!
That's right, a need for speed, and we've got it, and we're going to get faster in the coming years. But Jalen Hyatt had a great game. We're going to have to watch out for Cedric and see how he's doing. It appears they're talking about it may be more of an ankle issue. You know, we won't know for a couple of days, I wouldn't think. But like I said, he did walk off on his own power, which was good to see. And if it's an ankle, I'm less concerned than a knee. But, you know, we're probably not going to know for a few days. So hopefully he's going to be okay. We also had Jabari Small, who got hurt after about the second play, I believe it was. I mean, it was right off the bat. And you hate to see that with him because he's had so many injuries in the past, and it was an upper body injury, looked like a shoulder, and you know he's had that problem. So we'll find out about him in a few days. But Coach Heupel seemed to be positive about it, but you know we won't know. Sampson came out and played a fantastic game. You can see here he ran the ball 8 times for 57 yards. That's a 7-yard average. That's fantastic. That's really nice to see, and 2 touchdowns with a long of 27, so he had a really nice game, and he's living up to the billing. Look, everybody was talking about this guy being a difference maker in a fall practice, and he's really he brought it. And then our guy Squirrel White. Squirrel had 1 catch, but it was 47 yards, and then he also had a punt return that he almost took to the house. The guy got him by the shoestrings. I mean, he was gone. And I'm telling you, Squirrel is dangerous. He is incredibly dangerous, and these defensive coordinators are going to see over the next 2 or 3 years what a nightmare he is to deal with, and they're all going to be panicking. That's right. It's going to be just like that. So, I mean, you can already see that he's going to be a nightmare for him. So the wide receivers, they get an A+. There's really no other score that I can give them but an A+. They were fantastic. Very nice to see. And since we're talking about the wide receivers, let's move on to the quarterbacks. Hendon Hooker had his typical rock-solid game. He had a little bit of an off start, but he brought it in very nicely. And 14 of 18 for basically 300 yards, QBR of 88. He seems to be hanging around the high 80s with that QBR, which is really nice. Let me assure you. Do you think Florida would like to have that level of quarterback play right now? If you watch that FSU game, they got some problems. And we'll be talking about Florida a little bit later. I'm going to do a video on them. Believe that. But anyway, Joe Milton came out and had a wonderful game, made two of the nicest throws I've ever seen. They were just beautiful, right on the money too. QBR of 99.5, almost perfect. And we got to see Tavon Jackson. He had a nice day. He had 2 for 2 didn't he have a touchdown? He ran for a touchdown, I believe. But he did well. 20 for 25, 438 yards, 4 touchdowns, no INTs. Oh, man, I may have to do I don't want to do an A+, because a little bit of a slow start. But those numbers, look at these numbers. Crap. I got to do an A+. I don't have any choice. A+. Running backs, I'm going to give them a pretty darn good grade as well. 5.3 yard average, 238 yards. I'm just going to give them a good solid A. Now, I can't give them an A+++, but I'm going to give them an A, and they did real well. And that means the offensive line did pretty darn well too. So I've got to give them a good solid score, and we'll give them an A as well. And I know some of you are going to say B, whatever. I'm going to give them an A. They scored over 60 points. What do you want? The defense, I'm going to have to give them a really good score too, because understand they only scored 6 points. That in this day and age where you're not allowed to really touch a wide receiver, I mean, when you tackle them, you've got to get the permission first. May I tackle you? Oh, I can? Okay, thank you. And then you tackle them. That's really kind of how it is these days with wide receivers, which I don't particularly dislike because I don't want to see anybody get hurt. But that's, it's a different day and age, and normally every team can score points. But keeping them to 6, that's good. It's good, solid. They're going to get a good grade, obviously. Jeremy Banks had his great, solid game. 5 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. I was glad to see Joshua Josephs in there. I think he's going to be an outstanding player for us. He had 3 solo tackles. He had a tackle for loss. And Tyree West, man, he looked good. He looks like he's going to be quite a good player. James Pierce got in there. He had a tackle for loss. Didn't he have he had a bit of sack, I believe. And Tyler Barron got hurt in the game, but he came back in. That was big. I was very glad to see that. We don't need Barron out of the game, especially going into Florida or Florida coming here. So when you look at this score right here, I have no choice. Giving them an A. Now let's talk about Akron. This guy, DJ Irons, I'm going to tell you something. He was a tough son of a gun. Nice arm, runs well. And look, he had a lower leg injury. So, he wasn't 100%, and he still played really, really well. The announcers were going crazy over him. They're like, man, this guy needs to transfer somewhere after this year and go somewhere big time. He really did look good because our defense was all over him, and he managed to avoid a lot of sacks, and then he would make good throws. I mean, he looked good. I'd give him a pretty high grade, especially with what he was up against. I'm not going to give him a grade because he's not a Vol. But 32 of 44, 241 yards, only a 5-yard average, 63 QBR, which is, not too bad. I was actually surprised that they kept him in the game for so long. Look, a season is a long time to go, and that guy right there is really good, and Akron needs him. He should not have been in there towards the end of that second half. That was ridiculous. I mean, at some point, Akron needs to know when it's over.
Need braves tonight, but the fight is mine.
Oh, had enough, eh? Just a flesh wound.
Look, stop that!
Chicken!
Yeah, they just kept him in there. It was really kind of surprising. Look, you get a 40 or 50-point lead, you might want to take your best player out because he was getting hit a lot. I mean, a whole bunch. Let's get into something I was really happy with. Rushing the ball. They had 24 rushes for 35 yards. That is absolutely fantastic. I could not be more pleased with this with a 1.5-yard average. And going into this Florida game, we're going to have to stop the run because I watched that quarterback, and he didn't look so good to me. Anthony Richardson, he threw a couple of really bad interceptions, and I don't know. I thought he would look better than that. I thought they'd be able to build his confidence back some. So I think Billy Napier's got a few issues to deal with coming up. And like I said, we'll be talking about that. Don't you worry. I'm going to do a whole video on Florida. Actually, I'm going to do several. This is Florida week, and Doesn't get any bigger than that. And they had one really good receiver. This is that Ashaki. Man, he was good. He had 9 receptions for 100 yards. He made some great catches. They had some good players on that team. They're just not very deep at all. And they really look slow out there compared to how, of course, we're so fast. It's also glad to see a really good ball security. And Tavon looked good. You know, he was handling those punts without too much difficulty. Squirrel White looked great at it. So, Squirrel's going to be special. So I just could not have been more pleased with the entire thing. Now we're going to talk about a few negatives. Things that really irritated me were the way they were going after our quarterback's knees. That had me livid. When they went after him that second time on that pitch that he threw to Dylan, and the guy went straight for his knees, I almost went through the TV. I was like, get him out of this game. They're going after his knees. They're going to try to take him out. I mean, it was twice they did that. The second one was brutal. I thought Heupel was going to run across the field and have it out with Coach Moorhead, because that was ridiculous. I mean, you don't go after a guy's knees like that. That's not cool. That is crap. And that was what they call a very chippy game, and it was unnecessary. And really, their quarterback was as mouthy as any of them. He was really, look, he played well, but man, he was running his jaw a lot. And they took a big old whooping is what they did. Let's just be real. I mean, that was absurd. We whooped them all over the field. Yep, so a really good game overall, and I could not have been more pleased with the crowd and how they showed up. I mean, they literally could not stop talking about our crowd, and they panned it all the way up in the upper deck. I mean, totally full. So that was great for us for recruiting. That's huge. This is a very exciting team with an incredible crowd base and NIL money. I mean, we're going to do really well in recruiting if we continue on this winning streak, and I think we're going to be 4-0. But like I said, we're going to get into that later. But anyway, I did want to go over reactions and give some grades out, and overall a very good performance, and hopefully our 2 guys that got injured will be okay. Hopefully it's not anything significant. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover the Vols. And if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. I would appreciate it. I just got started a couple months ago. I need some subscribers. And like I said, I'll be covering the Florida game. I got a whole lot of good stuff for that. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk J.